Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Fress, and I'll be your host for the next hour. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll continue now where we left off yesterday in the book Rome and Civil Liberty by James A. Wiley, the great Protestant historian, bringing to bear the attempt to overthrow the legitimate government, the Protestant government of Great Britain, by installing Roman Catholic canon law. That's the ultimate objective of planting within a country dioceses, and over those dioceses appointing a bishop. It's to set up another system of law. Away goes God's law, away goes the legitimate civil government and all of its laws, and in its place is Roman Catholic canon law and Roman Catholic canon discipline. Discipline is the universe of one of the three universes covered in Roman Catholic canon law. The first being doctrine, or Roman Catholic dogma. The second being morals, which encompasses every act that a human can conduct, and then discipline for violating any of those acts. Now, we described how extensive that discipline runs and how it differs from Protestant discipline. And let us continue now with about the third line on page 73, if you're following along. It says, her discipline, that is the discipline of the Roman Catholic Church, runs on through the ascending stages of fine, that is financial or monetary sanction, the imposition of fines, monetary fines. It runs on then to imprisonment. If a fine isn't sufficient to change your behavior, then they run on to imprisonment, and eventually confiscation of your property and the stripping of your political and social rights, and last of all, death by burning. This is all encompassed in Roman Catholic canon law. These are the instruments whereby Rome, that is the Pope, may inflict suffering on those who violate Roman Catholic canon law. So you can see it's a complete system of law. And it is regarded by the papacy as to being divine law, supreme law, and it transcends all other law, including God's holy, eternal, and immutable law. Now it says, in the rear of her church, in the rear of her church courts, these ecclesiastical courts where this justice is rendered, where Roman Catholic canon law is the law of the land, stands an array of physical penalties. Okay, this is how she may inflict pain upon her subjects. First, the rack, then the dungeon, and finally the scaffold. The rack, if you've not done any study in history, is a table upon which the victim is strapped, fastened one end around the ankles or lower extremities, and the other strapped around the upper extremities. And then they tighten the straps in an attempt to stretch the body, to dislocate the spine, to inflict unbearable pain in order to obtain a recantation. Okay? If one survives being stretched on the rack, then one might be placed without the benefit of medical attention into a dungeon where there is it's usually subterranean, underground, and there's only one door leading in, and it's heavily guarded. And once the gates are closed, they're never opened until the person eventually expires. And they're left in total darkness and fed meager rations and then left for nature to take its course. And then if they want death to come sooner, they simply put you on the scaffold and hang you to death. So, in addition to burning by fire, as succumbed the lives of untold hundreds of millions of Bible-believing Christians, those accounts in Fox's Book of Martyrs and other Protestant histories, Rome literally unleashed the gates of hell upon those who violated Roman Catholic canon law or questioned the authority of the popes. This is how the old world order ran, and this is what Rome hopes to reinstall. At the time of the writing of this book, certainly that was their hope for Great Britain. And that is Rome's hope for the United States of America today as well. Now, in the rear of her church court stands an array of physical penalties: the rack, the dungeon, and the scaffold. Such is the ecclesiastical discipline of Rome. Such is her ecclesiastical discipline as described in canon law, as exercised in its whole extent at this hour in the Roman states, as exercised in France, Spain, and I would add Portugal and other popish countries, to all the extent to which Rome has been able to extort permission by her concordats. All right, concordats, again, is the contractual agreements between governments and the papacy authorizing church-sponsored, or rather government-sponsored discipline. Listen, let me make it clear. A concordat binds a nation to obey Roman Catholic canon law, to impose Roman Catholic canon law, excuse me, upon its citizens. It also is an agreement between the Vatican and the states, the nations, to impose these sanctions on behalf of the church. The economic sanctions, the imprisonments, and eventually the deaths. And so if the nations are conducting these punishments for Rome, who do you think pays for them? Certainly there is a great deal of cost involved in apprehending these so-called fugitives, and Rome calls them heretics. There's a great deal of cost in imprisoning them once they are captured, and there's a great deal of cost in killing them and disposing of the bodies. Who do you think pays for that? The citizens of the country. The Pope doesn't pay for it. The Roman Catholic Church doesn't pay for it. The citizens pay for it. Now stop and think. If the Concordat makes the citizens of those nations pay for the operations involved in the imposition of Roman Catholic canon law, then you are literally paying for Roman Catholic canon law to become the law of the land. You're paying all the expenses. You're paying with your tax dollars the price necessary to see to it that every man, woman, and child in the country is a subject of the Roman Pontiff and must obey Roman Catholic canon law, and if not, be killed. Taxpayer paid, all of it. So when you go to pay your taxes on April 15th, you're paying all of this for the Roman Catholic Church. You're endowing the Roman Catholic Church in the country. It's state-sponsored religion. State-sponsored tyranny. State-sponsored antichrist. That's how we've been unwittingly duped to be the servant of the man of sin. Our own government has betrayed us. And we can see how Rome is insidiously attempting to do the very same thing in Great Britain in 1865. To make all states Catholic through concordats and agreements between states and the Vatican. And it says, and such is the discipline under which the whole Romanist body in Great Britain has now been placed, to its whole extent in theory, and to an extent in fact that is already large and is daily widening. So you can hear the desperation in James A. Wiley's voice in telling his fellow Britons that they've allowed the papacy to just come in and establish Roman Catholic canon law by allowing the priest or the cardinal to come and read the papal bull, to divide up the land into dioceses, to install bishops, and to install this Roman Catholic canon law in these ecclesiastical courts was simply a surrender without a fight of the British government to the Holy Roman Pontiff, as he's called. It should alarm you any time a Roman Catholic runs for public office, because their first allegiance is not to the country they live in, nor to the government that they serve, but the Pope. And the ultimate aim for both is to install Roman Catholic canon law over the land, that you be made Roman Catholic in doctrine, that you be made Roman Catholic in action, in morals, and that you be made Roman Catholic even in discipline. The whole system, every area of human endeavor is prescribed by the papacy in a Roman Catholic country. At that point, you can just figure there's no room for God to even move in the country anymore. And that's what we're experiencing in the United States today. And I believe the United States and the Christians involved have bought it. And they bought it at Vatican Council II, when they dared to sit down with the papacy and try to strike any kind of an agreement. And we're going to pay the price. Unless this country repents, we're going to pay the price just as Israel did. Now, he says this makes sufficiently plain what is and only can be the real position of the Romanist body in Great Britain. They are under canon law, and by that law they are cut off and separated from all around them. The moral force of all other authority and law is completely evacuated as regards them. In other words, the Queen and the Parliament, the civil laws of Great Britain have no value, no effect, and no force upon them. They are wholly subject of Roman Catholic canon law. Now he says they form absolutely, in political as really as in religious matters, a distinct and different community. There are two nations on the soil of Great Britain. Queen Victoria, the sovereign of the one, Cardinal Wiseman, as the representative of the Pope, the sovereign of the other. It may be said, intolerable as this slavery canon law is, still, if the members of the Roman Catholic Church are willing to bear that yoke, it is of no right or duty of ours to object to their doing so. So grievous as this bondage is, it does not affect us. This, says James A. Wiley, is a view of the case wholly fallacious. Okay? If you are of a mind to say that if Roman Catholics wish to be subjects of the Roman Pontiff and to submit and to subject themselves to Roman Catholic canon law, and they do that voluntarily, then what right do we have to object? Well, James A. Wiley is going to give us a reason. He says, first, the very proximity of slavery is dangerous to liberty. Now, he gives us an example. He says, the glacier, amid the sunshine and flowers of a Swiss valley, gives an icy chill to the air and dwarfs surrounding vegetation. So great an organized system of slavery, mental and bodily, on the free soil of Great Britain, as we now unhappily have in the case of the restored Roman Catholic hierarchy, must necessarily cool down the political and social atmosphere, and by familiarizing us with the spectacle of bondage, must, insensibly as it may be, but not the less really, blunt our nice appreciation of liberty and tend to make us less jealous of our rights and less prompt in repelling aggression upon them. It's going to dumb you down. If the Roman Catholics want this slavery, if you think it's fine for them to have it, never mind that that slavery has no respect for the government as established by your Constitution. Just having it side by side with liberty cheapens liberty and makes those who love liberty less active in defending their liberties. So simply having this system in place side by side with the legitimate government of Great Britain is going to have a deleterious effect on the system. Okay? The disparity between the Roman system and the free system of Great Britain is going to have a deleterious effect on the freedom of Great Britain. Now, he says, but the author of the papal aggression are at no pains to conceal that neither on the ground of expediency nor on the ground of duty can they consent that the operation of canon law and the pontifical supremacy founded thereon should be confined within the narrow limits of their own community. Okay? So it's not their pretense. It should not even be hoped that they're going to limit the extent of Roman Catholic canon law to just Catholics. Now, if you entertain the idea that it might be possible for the two systems to live side by side with one another, one system of government for Catholics, another system of government for non-Catholics, well, you can just dash those hopes right in the trash, because Rome has never even offered to keep the two separate. That Rome intends to make every subject, every person in the nation subject to the Roman Pontiff. That once it's started, once Roman Catholic canon law is imposed upon Roman Catholics, then it's their duty to impose it upon the rest of the nation. That's the mission. I mean, ultimately, if there's going to be a global government under the headship of the papacy, well, the popes can never be satisfied with just having Roman Catholics under Roman Catholic canon law. So how would the Pope rule the whole world unless everybody just voluntarily became Roman Catholic and was baptized in the Roman Catholic Church and splattered with holy water ate the Jesus cookie and confessed their sins to a priest. It's not going to happen. The Pope knows that's not going to happen. So in order to govern the whole world, he has to use the Catholics within the nation to change the civil laws to match Roman Catholic canon law. And that's exactly what James A. Wiley fears for England at this time, and that's exactly what we should fear in the United States. And we see it happening right before our very eyes. Every day, more laws are passed that make us subject to our civil government, which has become the servant of the papacy. We're taxed to death to finance the overthrow, the gradual overthrow of our country. We're paying for it. Rome's not paying for it. Roman Catholics aren't paying for it. Well, they're paying their equal fair share portion of it, unless they can, get the judge to suspend their taxes. But everybody that pays taxes pays for the overthrow of the country by the papacy, the man of sin, the son of perdition, the Antichrist. I know I'm beating this to death, but I've found over years and years and years of talking about this, this is what is required to get people to comprehend this. It doesn't come easy to anyone unless God has inspired you somehow to comprehend how we've sinned against him. He grants to those who have a spirit of repentance an understanding of what happens and what is happening in this country and around the world. And you're blessed if you hear the words that I speak here on Inquisition Update. If you're reading these books for yourselves and you're comprehending what James A. Wiley is saying, I believe you're gifted of God, because there is a blindness over the vast majority of this country cannot comprehend this. Simply cannot comprehend it. Either because of ignorance or because of sin or just because of a feeling of self-preservation. Because if the things that I'm saying are true, if the things that James A. Wiley are saying is true, our government it has been overthrown. It may still call itself the United States of America. The Constitution may still be hanging in the halls of government, but it's not worth the paper it's written on. And that's a frightful concept. And we'd just rather not believe it's true than to admit the undeniable. And I think James A. Wiley's essentially having the same problem in Great Britain at the time of the writing of this book. The people just don't comprehend. He says they plainly enough avow that their object and aim is to make canon law universal, that they will not rest till it has become the one code of the empire, until the supremacy of Queen Victoria has been displaced de facto, as they already hold it to be de jure, by the supremacy of the pontiff. This is the only logical issue of the papal aggression. And stop it possibly cannot. Nor is it intended that it should, till it has reached this issue. Complete overthrow of all other government but Roman Catholic canon law. That's what James A. Wiley is plainly telling you is the very object of the papal aggression in Great Britain in 1865. Now, can we even hope that Rome's intent isn't precisely the same or even worse for the United States of America today? Not unless you're just trying to preserve some security in your own mind by just denying what cannot be denied. We'll be back right after the message.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Okay, welcome back from the break. You're listening to the second half hour of Inquisition Update on First Amendment Radio. If you'd like to support the program, please support First Amendment Radio, who sponsors it. And if you wish to contact me, please do so directly by email. My email address is tom@seawaves.us. tom@seawaves.us. Now, to make Roman Catholic canon law universal, that's the very aim of the papacy. That's the aim of the papacy in Great Britain. That's the aim of the papacy in the United States and all over the world. One global government, a divine government, they say, headed up by the pontiff, the Catholic Pope. Sounds outrageous, doesn't it? That's why it succeeds so successfully. Nobody can imagine it to be true, except those who study history and the Bible. And since both subjects are, well, not on the top of the list of studies these days, when there's so much entertainment, so much responsibility, so many other distractions in this world, the papal aggression just continues all over the globe, and people are clueless as to what it's all about. They latch on to any and every theory that comes down the pike, except the right one. And Satan is a subtle beast. But James A. Wiley's absolutely correct in his assessments. And I'm confident in mine. Now, my detractors would say, but Tom, Barack Obama doesn't serve the Pope. He's a Muslim. Well, you have to understand that in the New World Order, you can worship any god and every god as long as you obey the Pope. The ecumenical movement was the unification of all the world's religions under the headship of one religious sovereign. That's the Roman Catholic Pope. And the apparent Islamic faith attested to by Barack Hussein Obama is, well, it has great benefit for the papacy. Because if it appears to Christians, quote-unquote Christians in this country, that we have a Muslim running our government, what does that do? Well, it unites all Christians against this common Islamic enemy, doesn't it? And isn't that exactly what Rome wants us to do? Unite under the papal aggression? Barack Obama, if nothing else, is a fantastic stage player. He's just a character in a play. He was elected president, if you can believe that. I've got a bridge to sell you. But nonetheless, he was made president of the United States to strike fear in the hearts of Americans, American quote-unquote Christians, against this threat, real or imagined. Makes no difference. Whatever it takes to keep that fear alive, they will do in order to unite all Christians under the Roman Catholic Church, under the papacy, commensurate with the agreements made at Vatican Council II. It's just conditioning. Barack Obama serves the papacy no less than all the other kings of the earth. Now, there is a recalcitrant section of the world that worships another god, and they don't want to be under the authority of any other god but their presumed god. They don't trust the papacy. They've got centuries of history with the papacy, and they don't want to be under papal supremacy. And so they're a real threat to this New World Order. And they're striking out in terror. But guess who finances them? The CIA. That's becoming widely known now. Most people that hear me say this don't even object anymore. It's in the papers that the United States is financing this Palestinian terror, this Islamic terror, ISIS, and the whole lot of them. For what purpose? Well, for the same purpose that they put an apparent Muslim in the White House, to unite all Christians under the papal headship. So if you believe Barack Obama is a Muslim, you've bought the lie. He serves the papacy. He benefits the papacy by appearing for all the world to be a Muslim. And he's paid handsomely for that deception. He's in the White House because of his ability to deceive. That's how far the serpent will go to deceive God's people. He deceived Adam and Eve. He's going to deceive us too, unless we avail ourselves of the wisdom that is given to us in the Scripture. And the Scripture describes a Roman Antichrist that rises in the fourth and final kingdom on the earth, Rome. You can't get it wrong. If the Bible is the basis for your understanding, you cannot get it wrong. And for anybody to suggest that the Antichrist is going to be a Muslim, obviously the Bible's not the basis for your understanding. So if you wish to remain deluded, just leave that Bible on the shelf, collecting dust, and go on about your delusion. But for those of you who wish to know the truth, the Bible is the answer. God is the perfect and infallible prophet and historian, and it's all there in the book. And even the histories that have been written by man confirm it. James A. Wiley, in the writing of this book, confirms it. It's a papal aggression, not an Islamic aggression. To make Roman Catholic canon law universal all over the globe, that's the global Vatican. That's the global government. That's the New World Order. There's nothing new about it at all. To make Roman Catholic canon law the law of the world, this is the only logical issue of the papal aggression. And stop it possibly cannot. Nor is it intended that it should, till it has reached this issue. Universal global law. And he says, towards this issue have its promoters been pushing it with an adroitness as logical as it is persistent, and with a most unscrupulous and daring courage. Their efforts have been crowned with a success which is encouraging to them as it is formidable to us. They are nearing the goal day by day, and from one year to another the great kingdom of papal bondage is spreading wider and waxing higher in the midst of the free kingdom of Great Britain. Let us suppose that the Emperor of France sends across a marshal of the empire to inaugurate Code Napoleon and form a little community of Frenchmen in Great Britain, and that for the better effectuating of this design he partitions the country and appoints an inferior officer in each district with power to hold courts and administer the new code to all who wish to enjoy its benefits. And let us also suppose, Father, that the marshal admits into his little France not only all born Frenchmen, but persons of British birth willing to be denaturalized and to make profession of Voltaireanism. Or let us suppose that the Tsar of Russia deputizes a grandee of his kingdom to inaugurate, quote-unquote, Peter's Testament and form a little Muscovy on British soil under the modest pretense of being simply a church of the Greek Rite. Or, now listen to this one, here's another example. Suppose that the Sultan of Constantinople should commission to Britain a chief mufti. Okay? Here's the very example that is used to frighten Christians in America. Isn't it extraordinary that James A. Wiley, I wonder if they took this idea from James A. Wiley. He says, imagine that a Sultan of Constantinople should commission to Great Britain a chief mufti with a trail of 12 suffragan muftis behind him to form a community owing and obeying only the law of Muhammad, of the Mohammedan Empire, but professing all the while to be a company of the quote-unquote faithful who swear by Allah and believe that Muhammad is his prophet. Would we have any difficulty in seeing what is meant in these supposed cases? Should we not quickly distinguish between the belief in Voltaireanism and Code Napoleon, or between the Greek Rite and the rule of the Tsar, or between the faith of the prophet and the government of the prophet's successor? In vain would the one plead his descent from James and the other his commission from Gabriel. Okay? No Christian would believe it. No Christian would tolerate it. And that's exactly what's going on in the United States of America. We're told we have a Muslim in the White House, and that he's making us all slaves to Islam, or threatening our liberties, when in fact, all the time, it's Rome who is imposing her tyranny in this country. Marvelous example. He even names Islam. And that's exactly what they're doing in the United States of America. He says, in the name of neither of apostle nor of angel should we permit the independence of the country to be attacked. Okay? You would instantly go to war if Putin put a government in this country. You would instantly be ready to go to war if Islam tried to erect a government in this country. But you remain quiet, absolutely dead silent, when the Pope tries to replace our Constitution and form of government with Roman Catholic canon law. That's the very message that James A. Wiley is trying to convey to his fellow Brits. He says there is not a particle of essential difference between the cases we have supposed and the papal aggression. Nor is it one whit more difficult to distinguish, were we but willing to make the distinction. Where's James A. Wiley putting the blame? On his fellow Brits who are not willing to make the distinction. Who would rise up in a moment's notice against a Mohammedan mufti or a Russian czar, but won't lift a finger if the Pope tries to take over the government. He's just not willing to make the distinction between your Protestant government and Roman Catholic canon law. He's just not willing to make the distinction. They're one and the same. Completely compatible, you say to yourself. When the one, Roman Catholic canon law, is the very destruction, the ultimate destruction, the total destruction of Protestant liberty. It's the erection of a throne in this country higher and broader than that of Christ himself. And no one raises a protest simply because they're unwilling to make the distinction between the two. Further, between the religion of the Pope and the authority of the Pope. The religion of the Pope, like the religion of the prophet Muhammad, is still one of the superstitions of the world. Did you hear what James A. Wiley said? Roman Catholicism is no less a superstition, a false religion, a pagan religion, than is Islam. There's the distinction. Roman Catholicism is no more Christianity than is Islam. And if you would rise up in a moment's notice at any mufti that tried to divide up this land and appoint his prophets over this country, then you would equally rise up in opposition against this papal aggression. If you only comprehended what it is, if you were only able to make the distinction, to be able to distinguish and to separate the holy from the profane. And this is the very reason Israel was destroyed and placed under Babylonian and Syrian captivity. They simply would not and could not make a distinction between the God of glory and a false God and a false system. When a country is unable to distinguish the holy from the profane, then God answers with punishment and judgment. And we've been given the ultimatum. It's clear in the Bible. It's clear in history. It cannot be denied. America's at a crossroad. You either serve Christ or you serve Antichrist. You can't have it both ways. And you can't pretend that there's no difference. And you can't pretend that God's not going to react. He said the one superstition as well as the other will invade our country and find adherents. These we must tolerate, says the author, but the authority of the Pope, which canon law has imported whole and entire, is a different affair. If we cannot recognize it we cannot endow. Roman Catholic canon law, we cannot recognize and we cannot endow. We cannot accept Roman Catholic canon law in this country. And we cannot endow it, support it with our tax dollars. That's what James A. Wiley is saying to his Britons in 1865. Is it not equally and even more relevant to us today in the United States of America? When you come to understand what Roman Catholic canon law really represents, you've been told a lot of things about Sharia law, haven't you? It's a wicked system. And what could you expect from a pagan nation? But Roman Catholic canon law is identical in character, as is Sharia law. We're under a much graver threat under Roman Catholic canon law than we are under Sharia law. That's what James A. Wiley is trying to convey to Britons. You would better be under Sharia law than Roman Catholic canon law. You would be better off under the law of the czars, of the Russian czars, the godless communist nation, than you would be under Roman Catholic canon law. That's what James A. Wiley is desperately trying to get his fellow Brits to understand. And yet, even as James A. Wiley was speaking, there were representatives in the Parliament that were making concessions to Roman Catholics. Making concessions to the Pope. Rescinding anti-papal laws. You know what they're doing in this country? They're saying that people like me who are pointing the finger at the papacy, they're religious bigots and they're hate speakers and they're potential terrorists. Are you going to believe it? Because you're going to hear it day in, day out. You heard the Pope say on his airplane trip to the United States that anybody who criticizes his religion ought to be punched in the face. That's what Pope Francis I said on his way over here to the United States recently. Anybody that criticizes his religion ought to be punched in the face. Well, who do you think's going to do the punching? Under Roman Catholic canon law, the civil government. And how would that punch come? Through SWAT teams. Anti-terrorist SWAT teams. This country cannot distinguish truth from fiction. It cannot distinguish between Christ and Antichrist. And that puts every truth teller in jeopardy. I want my listeners to pray. Because there's going to come a time when the truth can't be uttered. We cannot recognize Roman Catholic canon law. We cannot endow it. To endow or even to recognize it is to betray the independence of the nation and the sovereignty of the Queen. And James A. Wiley doesn't even go so far to mention that it is a betrayal of Christ himself. But that's what it is. All right, the next portion of the chapter is entitled Canon Law versus British Law, or A Battle for Magna Carta. Canon law then bears on its front a claim in the Pope's behalf of a supreme, a universal, and a divine sovereignty. This sovereignty embraces both the spiritual and the temporal jurisdictions. To be sure, there is a distinction here in law, but not in fact. A distinction all but unknown to canon law, though maintained by modern canonists between the spiritual and the temporal jurisdiction, which go to make up the one supreme, irresponsible, that is responsible to no one but itself, and infallible sovereignty of the pontiff, of which it is but fair to give our opponents the benefit. His spiritual jurisdiction he possesses and exercises such directly. His temporal jurisdiction he possesses and exercises indirectly. Let me explain. The papacy dictates doctrine. That he imposes upon his subjects directly through papal encyclicals, pastoral letters, and papal bulls. His temporal jurisdiction, that is, his effect over morals, he possesses and exercises indirectly through the civil government. That's how the papacy rules over the kings of the earth. He commands all civil governments to impose his jurisdiction and his power, his temporal authority, and his justice, his discipline through the civil governments. That's how the papacy has survived for 2,000 years. Without the civil government, the papacy cannot impose Roman Catholic canon law on anybody. Now you know what role the civil government must play in view of the papacy. We'll talk about it more tomorrow on Inquisition Update. Thanks for listening.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.